Hello, learners. Welcome to the session on exploratory data analysis for our machine learning project. In this lesson, we'll take a closer look at the data scientist's initial procedure in implementing a linear regression model and evaluating its results. The data scientist was entrusted with a massive dataset containing a treasure trove of information about their clients. The task at hand was to analyze the data, answer critical questions, and derive insights that could drive their business forward. As the data scientist embarked on this journey, their first step was clear: getting to know the dataset and performing exploratory data analysis, also known as EDA. In order to perform this task with ease and simplicity, Google Collaboratory will be used throughout this course, and Python programming language will be used for coding. Let us begin the lab session. First, launch any browser like Google Chrome. To access the Google Collaboratory, type Google Collab and select the first official link. Google Colab is particularly useful for machine learning, data analysis, and education. It allows users to write and run arbitrary Python code through a browser. To begin writing code, select New Notebook. We can rename the file by simply clicking on the default file name. Let's call it Lesson 2. We'll start with importing all the necessary libraries for this task. We will use import Pandas as PD. Pandas allows us to analyze big data and make conclusions based on statistical theories. Pandas can clean messy datasets and make them readable and relevant. One of the most important features of Pandas is the Pandas data frame. We will look into its uses and implementation later in this lab. Moving forward, we'll import Seaborn as SNS. Seaborn is useful in making statistical graphics in Python. It uses matplotlib underneath to plot graphs. It will be used to visualize random distributions. Lastly, we will import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. Matplotlib library is a collection of functions that make matplotlib work like MATLAB. Each pyplot function makes some changes to a figure. For example, creates a figure, creates a plotting area in a figure, plots some lines in a plotting area, decorates the plot with labels, etc. The next step is importing the dataset and getting familiar with it. The dataset that we are using has been provided within the course. There are multiple ways to import a dataset into the file. We'll connect our file to Google Drive in order to import it from its location. We'll mount the cloud storage as a local drive and write the following code for it. From google.collab import drive. Drive.mount. Inside brackets and single inverted commas /content/drive. Accept the permissions required for the process. Now to import the dataset from the drive, we'll write the code as df equals pd.read_csv, inside brackets and double quotes, /content/drive/my drive/dataset /ecommerce_customers.txt, sep equals comma and double quotes. Here, df is the data frame, a two-dimensional data structure, like a two-dimensional array or a table with rows and columns. This line of code is instructing Pandas to read the data from the specified txt file located on Google Drive, where each piece of data is separated by commas and stored in a data frame called df. The line inside inverted commas is the path to the txt file that we want to read. With the dataset loaded into Google Colab, let us begin to explore the intricacies of the data. df.head. This displays the first 5 rows of the data frame by default. We can see that the dataset has 8 columns: email, address, avatar, average session length, time on app, time on website, length of membership, and yearly amount spent. To further understand the dataset better, let us see df.info. The info method prints information about the data frame. The information contains the number of columns, column labels, column data types, memory usage, range index, and the number of cells in each column, non-null values. Here we can see range index. The dataset has 500 entries from index 0 to 499. That is 500 rows. Next, we see the total number of columns, that is, 8 as we saw before. We can also see the data types of each column. This quick examination showed that the first 3 attributes, namely email, address, and avatar, were of the data type object. These types typically denote text or categorical data, which, in this context, might include customer names, addresses, and avatar choices. While these details were interesting and perhaps valuable in other contexts, they were less relevant for the immediate goal of understanding customer spending pattern, as we are working on linear regression, which works with numeric data. On the other hand, the last 5 columns labeled average session length, time on app, time on website, length of membership, and yearly amount spent were of the data type float 64. These numerical attributes held the key to unraveling the customer behavior and financial insights that the company sought. The data scientist, making a judicious decision, chose to focus on these last 5 columns for the forthcoming analysis. These variables would serve as the foundation for understanding the correlation between various customer behaviors and the annual amount spent. Thus, the yearly amount spent will be the dependent variable, whereas all the other 4 numeric columns will be the independent variables. Lastly, we will use the describe method before starting with exploratory data analysis on this dataset. df.describe. This method returns a description of the data in the data frame. The description contains these information for each column of the data frame that contains numerical data. Count, the number of not empty values. Here we have 500 rows and the count is also 500, thus there are no empty values in this dataset. Mean, the average mean of all values of the column. STD, it is the standard deviation, that is how spread out the numbers are. Here, for example, the column, average session length, has a very small standard deviation, which indicates that the data is clustered closely around the mean. Min is the minimum value out of all the data in the column. And similarly, max is the maximum value. 25%, 50%, 75%. These are the 25 percentile, 50 percentile, and 75 percentile respectively. Now we'll proceed to the implementation of exploratory data analysis. Firstly, let us see some basic visualization of correlation between the dependent variable and any of the independent variables using Seaborn. In this line of code, we are using Python Seaborn library to create a joint plot. A joint plot is a way to visualize the relationship between 2 variables. It can be written as SNS.jointplot. Inside brackets, x equals time on website. Here we are specifying that the variable on the x-axis of our joint plot will be time on website, meaning the horizontal axis of our plot will represent the values of time on website. Y equals yearly amount spent. Similarly, we are specifying that the variable on the y-axis of our joint plot will be yearly amount spent. Hence, the vertical axis of our plot will represent the values of yearly amount spent. Data equals df. This part of the code tells Seaborn that the data we want to use for creating this plot is stored in a data frame called df, which we have already done before. This joint plot is similar to a scatter plot, where each point corresponds to each observation in the dataset. This plot helps us visualize the relationship between the time customers spend on the website and the amount of money they spend yearly. This could be useful for analyzing customer behavior or making business decisions. However, here we can see that there is no evident relationship between these 2 variables. But to make the plot more informative and easy to understand, we will add one more argument to the joint plot function as alpha equals 0.5. This parameter controls the transparency of the points in the scatterplot. An alpha value of 0.5 means that the points in the plot will be somewhat transparent. This is useful as we have a dense scatterplot. It allows us to see overlapping points more clearly. Now let us try plotting this for another dependent variable, say time on app. Here we can see a comparatively better correlation between these 2 variables. We can see that the value of yearly amount spent increases slightly as the time on app increases. This is how EDA helps in selection of variables and measures to be chosen. To take a look at a broader view where all variables are measured against each other, we will use the pair plot function. It is a grid of scatter plots showing relationships between multiple pairs of variables in a dataset. SNS.pairPlot. Inside brackets, df. This function will automatically create a grid of scatter plots for all the numeric variables in the data frame. Kind equals scatter. Scatter plots are useful for visualizing the relationship between two continuous numeric variables, showing how they are distributed and whether there is any correlation or pattern. Plot underscore KWS equals alpha 0.4. Here we're customizing the appearance of the scatter plots within the pair plot. We're using the plot underscore KWS parameter to pass a dictionary of additional plotting keyword arguments. In this case, we're setting the alpha parameter to 0.4. As we know, the alpha parameter controls the transparency of the data points in the scatter plots. The alpha value of 0.4 will make the point somewhat transparent, thereby making its concentration visible. In the pair plot, we can observe each numerical variable being measured against every other numerical variable in our dataset. For every variable being measured against itself, we can observe that a simple histogram has been formed. In these plots, we will mainly focus on the last horizontal line, or the last vertical line, both for the variable yearly amount spent, as it is our dependent variable. We observe that the variable yearly amount spent has a faint correlation with average session length. No correlation is observed with the variable time on website. And the highest correlation is seen with the variable length of membership. Thus, the pair plot has given us a general idea about the relationship between each variable. This is all about exploratory data analysis in linear regression models. We'll learn more in the next session. Thank you.